Welcome to Mindful Ambition, the podcast where we explore what it means to lead with purpose and ambition without losing ourselves in the process. I am your host, Dr. Andrea, licensed psychologist, consultant, speaker, and founder of Mindfully Mind and Theraboss. Each week, I sit down with powerful women and emotionally intelligent leaders to unpack what drives them and how they stay grounded while pursuing big goals. Let's get started. Today's guest brings such a thoughtful and layered perspective to leadership, identity, and self-trust, especially for women navigating spaces where they're often asked to shrink, assimilate, or choose one version of themselves. I'm honored to welcome Urmi Hossain, a self-published author, speaker, podcast host, and finance professional based in Canada. Urmi holds both the CFA and CAIA designations and works in the financial services industry, while also using her voice and platform to advocate for women's empowerment, identity, and self-leadership. Her book, Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, explores her journey as a third culture woman navigating questions of belonging, culture, and self-worth. Through her writing and speaking, Urmi invites honest conversations around representation, choosing yourself, and reclaiming your story in a world that often pressures women to conform. She's also the host of the podcast, Stories Beyond Borders, where she amplifies diverse voices on identity, migration, language, and what home truly means. In addition, Urmi serves as co-chair of Women in Leadership's Montreal chapter and is deeply committed to mentorship, public speaking, and community building. Urmi, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to Mindful Ambition.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So your work is so deeply rooted in identity and belonging. As a third culture woman navigating multiple cultures, languages, and expectations, what did your early experiences teach you about fitting in versus staying true to yourself?
It taught me that we are always conforming to what's considered normal. We are often shrinking and we are often devaluing ourselves. So we live to perform a role. We live to meet the expectation of what society wants us to do, of what cultures, traditions, family want us to be. And sometimes we start to become dishonest to ourselves because we are not living our true self and we're not living truly. We're not really being who we are meant to be. And so it really taught me that it's okay to choose yourself and you can give yourself permission to be whoever you want.
I find that to be so impactful, giving yourself permission to be whoever you want. I mean, one of the things that I do find to be true is that that family pressure, that cultural pressure to fit kind of in the mold that they have, has been created or designated or what their expectations were, and then really, waking up one day and saying like that's not really aligned with who I
Yeah.
am and what I want for me. And then being able to choose you is probably one of the most important decisions that you will make one day. And the best decision. It's important
Yeah.
and the best because you start to live, you notice how you show up very differently
hmm
because you're so true now to yourself. How do you feel like your early experiences shaped the way that you show up today as a leader, as a speaker, and as a woman in finance?
I can definitely say I feel much more empowered. I definitely feel much more confident and I feel good. I really feel good about myself and the way I show up to the world. And I think for me it was very important that I show up as my most authentic self, that I am me and not someone that people wanted me to be. So I feel pretty good and I feel like it really shows in my energy, shows in my power. And I think it radiates, like that confidence just radiates through the way that I'm showing up today. So I'm happy of the way I was able to step into that, and I'm happy how I am becoming and I have become. Like I feel like it's a much more empowered and a much more elevated version of my older self.
Your book, Discovering Your Identity, is such an honest exploration of self-worth and belonging. What inspired you to write it, and what did writing that story teach you about yourself?
So what happened is I read another book prior to writing my book, and when I read that book, it was very relatable, like to the point that I felt that the author was writing about my story. And so I reached out to the author. I said, how did you write about this book? Why did you write about this topic? Like, what was your process like? And she said, yeah, I just self-published it. And for me, for herself, it was like she was going through a tough moment and she just wanted to get those messages out, those thoughts out. So she started to writing. And what happened for me was that back then I was getting invited to a lot of shows to talk about my story in being a third culture kid, me growing up in Italy as a South Asian woman, and how I was, trying to find belonging and trying to fit in. And so I thought that that was probably like something in demand, and I could like make those conversation into something more concrete. And that's why I wrote that book, Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And it's been quite of a healing process for me because as I was writing each chapter, I was just reliving my childhood, my teenagehood, and they were very vivid in my head, like as if like they happened yesterday. So that's why I was like, okay, I'm gonna like, start writing and see what this leads me to. And now I can proudly say I'm a self-published author. So for me, it was also like getting into that goal of saying, okay, I am a self-published author now.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm sure that that was a two-folded journey, like you said. It's you're going back into time and you're reliving certain things because the memories are so vivid, so very like healing in a way,
Yeah,
so that when you talk about it now you have a different perspective because you lived so much life after those experiences and now you're looking at it from a different lens, but also
yeah.
honoring what your 16-year-old self was feeling at that same time. So, for women who feel disconnected from parts of their identity, where does the journey of rediscovery begin?
I would say it comes from self-trust and self-belief. And it comes also by speaking out about it. Like you have to, like if there are things that you're going through, there are struggles, like find trusted people to who you can like really share some of the struggle and challenges and find people similar to you so they can give you some guidance, share some wisdom
Mm.
so they can really help you to really like navigate those challenges and maybe help you to find your identity. So for me, my own process was really like writing things down, like rediscovering myself, reflecting on myself, what was the kind of person I wanted to be. And I think an important question you should ask yourself is, who would I be if I had a life with no expectations, And I think that really opens up the door to a lot of possibilities. So really like doing some inner reflections and talking about this with trusted people who can really guide you so that you can really find yourself, your true self. And so for me, it was really talking about it with trusted people. I have a very close friend who was very similar to me, and she told me like you have to live your true self. And so that was very like resonating. Like I was really resonating with what she was saying. So that
Hmm.
would be my advice.
I love that. So, you work in financial services, and traditionally, it's a high performance industry, often male dominated space, while also leading conversations around identity and empowerment. How have you learned to hold both worlds without dimming part of yourself?
It's about, I would say for me, it was more about being my authentic self. Like, I really value authenticity. It's something super important for me. And I told myself that no matter what I am, like, no matter in what circumstance, whether it's my professional life or my personal life, I always have to be myself. Like, I should not change for something or for someone that I am not. And so for me, it was really important that no matter what I am, I'm always authentic. Like I'm always myself. I have to be honest to myself. And so that's how I'm able to really lead both lives. And I'm also not, I'm not always looking for perfectionism. I'm not looking for productivity. Like I just have to make sure that I'm consistently showing up for the person that I am and not changing for someone that I'm not.
So, in that process, what do you think was some of the inner work that you had to do to give yourself permission to take up the space that you do?
I really had to put some boundaries. I think setting boundaries was something that really helped me
Hmm.
to navigate a little bit those two kind of worlds. Like for me, my my life after my work is very, very important. And for me to achieve some of the things that I do, especially when it comes to my creative side, creating content, like I really had to put a boundary. Like I didn't want my life to be consumed by that. And some other work that I did was also like journaling, doing like writing down like positive affirmations, reframing some of the ways that I think, because sometimes the imposter syndrome kicks in and you're not 100% aware of it sometimes, like that's the thing. I'm a victim of it too. Sometimes I'm like I'm second guessing and I'm telling myself, why am I second guessing? Why am I justifying myself, And I think it's the way we're conditioned to grow up as a woman. Like you're always thought to be perfect. You cannot do a mistake. If you do a mistake, oh my gosh, it's such a crime. And so I like decided to let go of those thoughts, So I started to do like a really inner work of writing like positive like words. Even in my vision board, I have like words such as strong, bold, confident. Like I reframe my way of thinking. Like I switch the way I think. Sometimes instead of saying I cannot do this, I tell myself, no, I can do this, and I should not explain myself to people. And putting boundaries was quite a challenge at the beginning,
Can
but I'm glad.
imagine.
Yeah, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did because it's important to protect your energy. It's important to protect your power, and it's okay. And it's okay to put boundaries. Like there are healthy boundaries. So I read books about it. So,
I mean, in a lot of the work that I do with my clients, I mean, that's the thing that I'm always preaching, right? Like you have to protect your peace, your energy, being able to set boundaries, being able to say no to things that are not aligned with
mm-hmm.
you. It's okay. And, I think that doing that inner work is sometimes like really hard to do and yet so important to do because you can have a whole different perspective of life. And the gremlin, I call the imposter syndrome, the imposter phenomenon, I call them gremlins, right? And so the gremlin is always going to be talking and they're always interjecting and always trying to sometimes protect us, really, from the unknown, because the unknown can be so scary and you don't know what the outcome is, but you'll never know if the outcome is good or bad unless you do, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
can convince yourself that it's going to be bad. You don't have the evidence that it's going to be bad. So
Mm-hmm.
all you can do is try and see what you learn and see what you learn about yourself, see what you learn, what maybe you need to do differently, see what you need to do differently. And then sometimes, something that I find very helpful is naming that imposter voice that's sometimes very loud. I've named mine Gretchen. And then I just tell her, you know what, I need you to not talk right now. I need you to just shush. I hear you, I heard you, I understand you, and thank you.
That's so
And I'm still
funny.
gonna go and do it. Sometimes we just need to be playful with ourselves and playful with it because it really does change how we look at things, how we approach things, how we can lean into ourselves even more if we're
Yeah.
just able to do those things. And ultimately, you want to be true to yourself more than anything.
Yeah. So for me, one exercise that really helps is really writing down sentences at the beginning of my
Mm,
day, positive like self-affirmation sentences, and that way my brain is already thinking that way. So that's one exercise that really helped me, and I think you are rewiring your brain just to
mm-hmm.
like think about those positive words, and it really helps. Honestly, it really helps because you're doing the switch right away, and you're like turning off that voice in your head.
Yes, absolutely. And the rewiring part is so important, right? Because there might be moments where it's going to misfire and you're going to go back into how you used to do things. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
consistently doing the work to rewire your brain,
Yeah.
it's going to be faster for you to recognize that it's misfiring and that you need to
Yeah.
change it back to the new way of doing things, a new way of thinking about
Mm-hmm.
things. Our mind is a computer, and so sometimes it's just not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just needs a reboot, and we need to just
Yeah, that's
reboot
it.
it
That's it.
and continue feeding it that positivity. Through your podcast, Stories Beyond Borders, you've created space for conversations that don't always get prioritized. Why was it important for you to amplify these stories, and what have they taught you?
Let me tell you this. Like I'm a big advocate of immigration stories. My parents were immigrants. I am myself an immigrant. We are all fruits of, like
Immigrants.
immigration.
Hmm.
And what happened is I was always talking to different podcasts about my stories, moving to Canada, my story of being a third culture kid. I would often talk about my parents' story of why they moved from Bangladesh to Italy. And I told myself, okay, I'm telling my story, but I think I want to be on the other side and be the host
Mm-hmm.
of a show. And I wanted to create something of my own. And I thought about deeply what would be a topic that is interesting. And honestly, I didn't think that it was going to be so relevant nowadays, but it is because I'm getting a lot of feedback from people being like, no, immigration stories is like very important nowadays. And so that's why I created Stories Beyond Borders. And I think storytelling has a huge, huge power to really impact people, inspire other people. And so I brought people, like they talk about different things, why they have moved from one country to another, people who are struggling being biracial, people, struggling in like settling in a new place. And it really taught me about resilience and courage. And I think often we don't really think about it, but people moving from one country to another and they have no clue about what the new place is all about. It takes a lot of courage, like especially if
Mm-hmm.
you do not know the languages, if you do not know, if you have no connections over there, like it's an act of courage. That's one thing that I learned. So I love, hearing people's stories. It's always very fascinating. So yeah, that's why I created that platform.
That's amazing. I mean, and one of the things that I always come back to, I'm not an immigrant, but I am a daughter of an immigrant mother. My grandmother is also an immigrant, and she came here. She had 7 children. She immigrated on her own, and her children were left back home in El Salvador. And I think that, just even that is such a powerful, courageous. With that, it's just so an impactful moment, when you reflect back. And I always say, like, our stories don't just start
Mm-hmm.
with us. Like, our
Mm-hmm.
stories start with the decisions and experiences that our parents and their parents went through, because their story starts with their parents, right? And we're a chain. And our story, it's so
Yes.
important for us to understand our story, the stories of those that came before us, because it gives us a more global perspective of like where we came from. And like, you always want to have a vision of where you're going, but without losing sight also of like where you came from, and what is true to you, and what are those things that helped shape you as a person, as a human, as a leader, as as a woman, all
Mm-hmm.
the things that make you you. It's beautiful when you actually embrace all the things, parts of your story.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how I feel about my parents' story. Like when they moved to Italy, they had no connections with
Hmm.
Italy. They did not know the language, and I was like, I don't know how they did that. But for me, that's a story of courage, and I honor
Yeah.
that. Like I see them differently. I see them with different eyes now that I think about it. Like I also moved to Canada, but I know the language, I know the people. I had connections, so
Right.
it just makes you grateful for where you are, and that you should not take
Hmm.
things for granted.
I mean, I even say that my mom, she kind of takes the bulls by the horn, and she's very, she didn't come here knowing English, but she definitely, made a very great and successful life for herself, trying to integrate herself within the
Hmm.
culture that she didn't know, within the world that she didn't really know. And she came here as a teenage girl, which we have been teenage girls. It is very complicated during that time of our lives, right? Like, there's a lot of things going on, and then being able to, grow from those experiences. And like you said, even with your story, like going back to when you were 16 and reliving
Yeah.
some of those things and those memories, right? Like, it's really, impactful when you really look at it, the strength and the courage that it takes for an individual to do those things. It gives you strength, and it gives you some sort of empowerment, because you know that this is your lineage, this is your story too.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Yes.
so with that, talking about stories, what do you think happens when women finally hear their own experiences reflected in others' stories?
It makes them feel less alone in their journey,
Mm.
especially if they're going through some struggles. I think it also dissolves shame. They maybe could be around some stories. It makes stories much more relatable. And as I was saying before, stories are very inspirational. And that's one thing that I learned by going to public speaking classes. They always tell us that you have to include stories. Stories are impactful, stories are inspirational, stories drive change. And when you're hearing someone else's story, you know that you're not alone in this journey. Because sometimes some of the journeys, especially when it comes to immigration, you think it's just you going through that, but no, you're not alone. Everyone goes through something. And so for me, I think stories are so impactful. And that's why even my podcast is called Stories Beyond Words, is because stories are what, create, they create human connections. And that's why they're like so important, that we should tell them as often as possible.
Well, a recurring theme in your work is self-leadership, choosing yourself even when it feels uncomfortable or lonely. What does self-leadership look like in practice for you?
It means to basically lead with impact. It means putting yourself first, and it means also building sustainability. Because I used to think that leadership is all about titles, it's all about achievement. You have to have like a certain type of title in a company to be a great leader. But then I realized that leadership is more about actions, actions that actually make an impact and make a change in the world. And I would see what other people's, especially like previous figures, what they would do. Like for me, Gandhi is like an inspirational figure, and I would see how they would make a change. And so those are the people that I saw as an inspiration, and that's what I think leadership is all about. You have to lead with impact, influence, inspiration, and you have to create a system that is built on sustainability. You want to make sure that your leadership style is aligned with your values and how you want to show up every day. So for me, that's what self leadership means.
What advice would you give to women who are afraid that choosing themselves will come at a high cost?
I think not choosing yourself, it would be very expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
I'm
expensive. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was gonna say, yeah, it's sometimes like even if you do think it's a high cost, like it's even higher not choosing yourself or not really living authentically.
Yeah.
When I talk to people, I always ask when they have these questions, and I'm like, okay, well, what is it gonna cost you? You can go that way, or you can do that thing, or you can satisfy that, person's perspective of you or expectation of you or what they want out of you. But when you really think about it, what is it going to cost you to lose yourself in that process?
Mm-hmm.
To me, and this is like where values and I think align and living in alignment with your values is really important, because to me, I feel very strongly like you. It's a losing yourself in the process of something is a cost that's too high for me to give, right?
Yeah.
And that might not be the same for everybody, but like for me, I do think that in the way that I value things, it's too high of a cost.
Yeah. Even for me, like you're not losing anything by trying something new, by following those fears. But when you're not trying, you're not growing, and you do not know
Hmm.
what's out there for you to explore. And there might be something beautiful waiting for you out there. But you just being in that comfort zone, you're not getting anything out of your life. And so that's why I always say, like, try things, like don't wait for things to happen to you. Just go and chase them, create opportunities, look for opportunities. And I think we live in a world where there is a chance really to do big things. And I always say, like, dream big, like don't shrink yourself.
I love that. Don't shrink yourself. Well, you're deeply committed to growth professionally, physically, and personally, from Toastmasters leadership to boxing, running, and hit training. How has discipline in one area of your life strengthened confidence in others?
So I really value discipline, and I think discipline it's something that makes me consistent. Like the more disciplined I've
Hmm.
been, the more consistent I've been in achieving my goals. And it's true, I do a lot of things and I pursue a lot of stuff, a lot of things, but I would say that the two things are not separate, like my professional life and my personal life. Yes, they could be separate, but they're also integrating in one and another. And so I need the discipline that maybe I'm learning in my professional life to be applied also in my creative side, because the professional life is all about structure, it's all about rigidity, there are systems. Whereas in your personal life, you are building your own stuff, and that's where the discipline part comes in. And so the fact that I was able to learn my discipline part in my professional life, I think it really helped me to be a bit more focused in achieving my goals and making myself sure that I was always disciplined in achieving and doing those things each day, whether it is working out, whether it is self-care, whether it is, creating content for my podcast, for my YouTube channel, whether it is, giving back through mentoring. So I feel like discipline is I highly value discipline, and it's been a recurring theme in both of my lives.
And so, how do you stay consistent without letting it turn into pressure or perfectionism?
So I value progress over perfection, and that's how I am able to be consistent. Like, I'm not thinking, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna do a little bit of it, and then at the end I would see the results. So I'm always like taking small steps, small actions. And there is an expression that says, bite an elephant, no, eat an elephant one bite at the time, or something like that. And I truly
Mm-hmm.
think that, like, consistency and results do come from taking little action. So that's how I'm able to be consistent, because I'm not looking right away at the end goal. I'm just making sure that I'm doing something every day towards that goal. So
We're coming towards the end, and I want to do this quick fire kind of round where I ask you a bunch of questions and you just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
A value that guides your leadership,
Authenticity.
a belief about identity you had to unlearn,
That you have to belong to one culture only.
a practice that helps you reconnect with yourself,
Boxing.
a book, quote, or mantra you return to often.
So it's the quotation. It's on my wallpaper on my phone, and it says, "Be the change you want to see in the world," by Gandhi.
What does ambition with intention mean to you?
What does ambition with intention mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
It means alignment.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us on Mindful Ambition. If today's conversation with Urmi Hossain resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone navigating identity or belonging, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep showing up with intention. Your ambition deserves to be honored. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.